Next is Angelo Keely. I'm going to give a little bit of information on Angelo before he can jump in and probably fix some of the stuff I screw up here, and a lot of it's from my perspective. Um, but Angelo, how I first met him was through a friend of mine, Jason Dunn, who's been a big help at Easton. But Angelo is also an Easton member. He trains Muay Thai in Boulder with his son. He's also the CEO and co-founder of Kion Supplements. It's based out of Boulder. It offers high quality premium supplements. I'm a huge fan of their amino acids, as well as my wife. Like, my wife texts me like, "Hey, when are my next delivery amino acids coming?" She does this every like few weeks, and I'm like, "I don't know, babe. Here's the delivery. It should be here tomorrow." She's like, "Okay, cool." And then if they're not going to be on time, I have to make sure to order some ahead because she likes the capsules and I like the powder. We constantly anyway. A lot of Easton is on the does the amino acids as well. They're a massive help to our life, and we get more about that later. Um, and then on top of the supplements, Angelo is actually the person. This is going to be anybody that's part of Easton understands this. That through someone that Angelo knows and I know, Angelo introduced this person to Voxer, which is how we run the company through all discussion threads, as well as EOS traction tools. He brought that book to a friend of mine who brought it to me, and both these things happened around 2017, 2018, and I implemented those into the company, and we run the entire company through Voxer and Traction. So Angelo is actually the founding person that discovered these things. So whether you love or hate Voxer, I think most people love it. If they don't, they just don't quite get it or know how to use it properly. But because of Angelo, we have these devices. So on top of these, his other background, which we'll talk about in a minute, like without these, Easton wouldn't we be where it is today. So I thank Angelo quite a bit for that. He's also been a great mentor. We don't get to spend much time together, but whenever we do, I feel like it's a profound conversation and I learn a lot. I don't think he gets a lot out of it, but I will always take all the knowledge I can. I'm kind of like a vampire. I'll suck everything out and try to use it to my best ability. I don't give much back, and there's no, immortality, but kind of like a vampire. Angelo, as far as like what I stated there, do you want to give a little bit more background? I have some more questions in regard to that, but you want to clear anything up I said?
If anyone likes Voxer and likes EOS, you're welcome. And if you don't, like that's not true. I didn't have anything to do with that. Yeah, I mean those are two pretty cool tools. So I'm glad that I still use them both every day. I think they're really helpful, useful tools. So that's cool. It's been so helpful for you guys. And it made me think of a Thoreau quote that I really like. That is to suck the marrow out of life.
My
So
wife and I have been very into Thoreau lately too.
yeah.
Thoreau and
Oh,
Emerson,
good.
the
Yeah.
philosophy behind their
hmm
lives. That's pretty funny. You bring them up.
It's pretty cool. Transcendentalists.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's pretty accurate, dude. So,
Hell, and
and I
the
get
one thing I
stuff from
want,
hang out with you.
I don't know what you get, but okay, I'll take it. One thing I want to point out too, which is a big thing for me, and I think we have a lot of new parents at Easton coming up. Uh, we care obviously quite a bit about our family. Like we have kids, we have relationships. We, on top of the business stuff and our personal well-being and health, I know Angela and I spend a lot of time working on, like whether it's growing our brain, whether it's growing our physical body for longevity, or just feeling the best we can every day. Um, I know family and friends are wildly important to Angelo. So he pours quite a bit into his relationship with his children and his spouse. So I think that's another like great piece that I really find a connection with Angelo on. So maybe we can touch on some of that today. We probably don't have enough time, but I want to like really promote him on that side. Like he's into the business, he's into the martial arts, he's into growth, he's into family, and just kind of doing the right thing where he can. And for me, that's who I want to be like as well. So I really appreciate that about you. Um, so
Thanks,
Angelo, to kind
Mike.
of jump, yeah,
I appreciate that That's it's a really good reflection to hear from you because those are the things I value. So it's just cool, like to feel seen. And I think it's why I like you, man, because I agree. I think that's what you're about. And I think a lot
I
of people at Easton are. It's a
I
really
agree.
cool, it's a great community.
I had therapy before this, and I know you got really into therapy for a while and how you were doing it. But I was thinking about you. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be clear for this. But which is so many things we could talk about. But I think what's incredible about you is like some of your previous history you've told this story, I'm sure a lot. Um, but I would love to hear, maybe the group would like to hear kind of about your past. What brought you to Kion, which is the company you've co-founded and run today, which is a huge help for me, and what brought you to Easton. Those kind of those items.
Man, well, there's a lot of different, I guess, like ways to handle that story and like what's important or what's like maybe most interesting to people. I think maybe if I just take the threads that like you offered, which were being into business, being into health and growth, being really into family. I can't remember what the fourth thing was. Those are the three I'm remembering.
How you found
Those
Easton?
Well, no, I'll
Oh,
get to how I found Easton, but I'm saying when you give me the
got it.
reflection of like what makes me cool or whatever, I think those were it was like business, it was like health and growth, maybe slash martial arts, and then the third thing was like family. And I think
Friends.
those things are actually like pretty tied together for me. I was raised in a family that was like I guess our religion was like health. Like my family had a natural health food store, a natural health food restaurant. They were really into fitness. My mom was a like a master swimmer. My dad had like been an importer of botanicals, like supplement herbs, like the raw materials before that. So I was raised like in a very hippie health and fitness focused family in Austin, Texas. And so I mean, I just kind of like and pretty alternative in that way. I mean, I guess like maybe naturally is like a hippie or like natural health like in the 80s and stuff like was already kind of alternative, but just like really kind of following the beat of your own drummer was like very much the culture I was brought up in. And not to go too far down like into like dark stuff, but I when I got to adolescence, I I think growing up in a family that was very entrepreneurial and very I don't know how to describe it other than like you just had to like advocate for yourself and like figure out things for yourself, and like everyone was just kind of connected as a family, but like nothing was like kind of uh, I took everything for myself and had to learn all my lessons by myself. And so through that, like when I got into high school and got into social stuff and adolescence, I took a lot of risks and got into a lot of trouble. And that kind of pinnacled at one point in my life when I was 16. I took too much LSD. I had a psychotic break. I got super, super scared. I was in a bad neighborhood. I accidentally, without intention, I was not the kind of guy that picked a bunch of fights. Um, Upset these people much more hardcore than me, and they beat me nearly to death. They stabbed me twice in the back and they stabbed me in the knee. So I had to have emergency abdominal surgery. I'd have my patella tendon reattached, and I woke up a week later, and I had many, many months, if not years, of like recovery from that, both physical and mental and emotional and psychological. And that was really like the beginning of, I think, my adulthood. That was when I was 16 and a half, and in that it was yeah, man, it was just like a major turning point in like a lot of people who undergo some kind of trauma. It's the type of thing that can kind of like beat you down, and then you just keep repeating the trauma patterns over and over again. And or maybe it's a combination of both. It's like a moment where you get like awakened to the fragility of life, to um, maybe the power that you have to make decisions and to change what your future is going to be. And yeah, it just like really got me. It wasn't an immediate thing, but it got me pretty stoked on life and really wanting to like live a better life and to be much more committed to my own health, and both like physically, mentally, and to try to be like really good at shit in life. Like get like I'd always been good at school, but almost like from a lazy position. It got me to like no, like I want to like win, like I want to try to do my best, and not for anyone else, but like for myself, to fully express the potential of life, to suck the marrow out of life, and to like be the best person that I could be in this one existence that I get. And yeah, and so it took me on all different kinds of adventures. Like I lived over, I got really into college. I did tons of international work. I learned a bunch of different languages. I lived in Europe. I lived in India. So I lived overseas for several years. And kind of at the end of that journey, which is like late 20s, moved to Boulder, really with the intention of like starting a family. I had the woman who's now my wife. She was on that whole journey with me overseas for many years. And so I moved to Boulder to start a family, and explored some different businesses that included like software development, ran a behavioral healthcare company for a few years, and then in 2017 founded Kion. And I think like the main story of that for me, like my personal thread of how it all comes together, is like, man, it's like just coming back to your roots in a way. Like I was a kid that was raised um, again like non-traditional. Like I didn't go to a doctor. I didn't go to a doctor or have a birth certificate until I had to go to first grade. So like I was raised on vitamins and supplements and things like that, and echinacea and amino acids. Like the first supplement I remember my mom giving me was amino acids, and her even kind of like being like, "Can't you feel it, Angie? Like, isn't it amazing?" So like being, like we all get in some way like brainwashed by our parents to whatever the
Yeah.
belief system is, right? So yeah, man. So it's like when I kind of evolved to a place where I could really start something new and fresh. And I tried starting many different companies before this. It's not some like super intentional thing where it's like, oh, there was like this really unique hole in the market and I was wanting to win that. It was like, what do I care about? What's important to me? What am I passionate about? What's like, what can I feel confident committing my life to? And end up founding a supplement company. So, and in that journey, then it's just been about like, well, how do I make it the most badass supplement company? Like how do I focus like on, I think really the journey's been like, how do I focus on less supplements and make them better? How do I make sure that like I'm not selling myself some story, but it's really based off of like the best consolidation of all the science and all the studies and everything that's like happened up until now to make the best products? How do you like build the best team? Um, just like having integrity with like my ideas of who I want to be and what I actually do and what I say. And so it's been an awesome journey, and super stoked about it. And then I guess when it gets to Easton, what's interesting is, I mean, I just heard about Easton like living in Boulder because it's like the I think it's the premium martial arts studio in a way. It's a really strong brand in the Front Range. And I think Jason Dunn had like been trying to hype me on jujitsu. And so like I went over to his house one day and he like, tried to show me some stuff and I was like, okay, this is cool. Yeah, I'll try it. And I went to a class. This is years ago. And I was like, nah, that's not for me. Like it was just too, I think I'm like with people all day and working a lot and getting really intimate with some other dude, like some big, hairy, sweaty dude like me, like right in my face and like breathing on me and like choking me. I was like, I'm just like, this is not how I want to spend my evenings.
Totally. I have a point. Let me pause real quick. I have to just comment on that. What's funny? I visit the schools on Tuesday nights, and for me, I'm pretty. I don't use this label with my kids, but I'll use it on my own. I'm shy. I'm a shy dude. Like I'm an
Mhm.
introvert. Like I work at home and I work hard and I'll do my meetings. But like man, for me, like I have a hard time going into public and walking around and like introducing myself to people. So I was thinking of making a shirt that says, "Hi, I'm Mike Tousignant. I'm the president of Easton. I'm shy. See back." And on the back, like, please, please, please talk to me. Tell me anything you want to tell me, critiques, whatever. I'm always down to talk. And I want to talk, but I'm super insecure to approach people. And
Hmm.
so for me, like my outlet is like the jujitsu. Like I'm pretty shy, but then I go in there, it's like um,
Intimacy.
forced intimacy. So I
Hmm.
get into it. I'm like, oh, I'm having fun here. But that's where I can get my outlet. Where the rest of the day, I'm not like that. Where I see you, I've been to your parties. It's like you are, you're gregarious, you're charismatic, and everybody flocks to you, and you get everybody to. You made that your party so awkward this summer. I've talked to all these strangers for bracelets. I'm going to get judged if I don't have bracelets, and it's like you're forcing us to be uncomfortable. And once it started, it felt good. So I can see why. I guess I'm just understanding where you're coming from.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're all like kind of wired differently. Um, so then I didn't come back for a while. And then my son really wanted to try Muay Thai. And he was 8 then or 9 then, I don't know. And so I took him and I was like, oh, this is like really good. And then on top of that, I was like, whoa, like the GM or whatever, like Matt is the instructor of the kids class. Like that was so rad to me. Like it gave me that much more appreciation for Easton. Like how, I don't know, man, like the administration is so bought in and cooked in, and like you have this like badass fighter who's also running like a local studio, but is also teaching the kids thing. I just loved it. So I was like, man, I think I got inspired from that. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna try kickboxing. And I tried it and I just loved it. And I think the thing that stood out for me, it's interesting. It's like, man, I wish I'd been more exposed to martial arts as a kid was, I was a drummer like my whole childhood and really committed to playing drums. And actually like in that journey I described earlier, like in high school and college and stuff, I actually ended up moving out early when I was 17 and emancipated myself. And I supported myself as a musician. I was like a drummer. So I've been like super committed to that as a kid and young adult. Muay Thai and kickboxing is like the closest sport to drumming that I've ever experienced. And I feel so
Wow.
at home. Like the that it's about rhythm. It's about like the delicate balance of like control and power in a strike. It's like how it can be controlled and precise, but like really powerful, or maybe not. Maybe it's soft. Maybe it's like, this is more like getting into drums, but like a grace note. Like, I just love it, man. So it's just, it like, whoa, like this was like my sport I wish I had been exposed to when I was 10. And yeah, so it's been really cool getting to continue to grow on that. And my son too, being super into it. So it's been awesome, man. It's been a gift.
That's incredible. I never thought about the percussion side of. I mean, as soon as you said it, it clicked. But the percussion in Muay Thai, like you can hear when you walk in, you can feel the rhythm, and somebody that's really good, you can even feel the differences of like them setting up a punch with a soft jab to like set up a faster one. Right? There's like so much subtlety in there, and like Muay Thai is one of those things. There's only so many strikes, but it is so in depth just with those few simple strikes and how much you can actually do with it. Where jiu-jitsu is like there's a million moves and counting, right? Literally. And
Hmm.
it's just, they're both very in depth in their own way. And there's a very different mental piece to both of them that are all also quite complex. And the way you described it is like the drums or the percussion side of it. I never noticed that till you just said it, and all just clicked for me. That's pretty remarkable. Um, two things I wanted to comment on while you were speaking. I wrote them down. One is kind of, you may not have an answer for, but I'll ask that second. The first one is, I really love, and this is like part of like, I think business 101, or like you read anything about businesses that do well, unless they're massive, they create more verticals, focusing on like less for quality, and the ones that are really good. Cause I remember asking you a couple of things. Why don't you do this supplement? Why do you do this supplement? And you're like, well, I want to make sure this is my take on it. You can correct me. Is that you're focusing on things that you really believe move the needle, I think, for people, and that and you're focused on high quality products, right? So like you have a limited supply of what you offer, and there's things that like, if I'm like, okay, I really need, like, the sleep supplement has helped me significantly when I'm having a hard time sleeping, because if you get the right formula in there, and then the amino acids, right? Like those are game changers. Like being able to get all of that, um, those amino acids without having to add on calories if I'm doing fasting, and like right after a workout, I think that's a massive piece on how much it helps my life. And there's a few other ones that I've used quite a bit. Like the omega-3s are great, obviously, and you're getting high quality ingredients because of your company. It's not just like going on Amazon and getting this crazy list of whatever that aren't regulated, and you're local. Like I think there's another big piece. Like I know you, I know your product, I can see you, and I know what I'm getting is quality stuff. So I just I just wanted to touch on that because I love how you talked about like focusing on like the quality piece, or like, I don't know, you didn't say less is more, but that's kind of what comes to my mind. The other thing,
I do believe less is more. Or I believe, what, I actually kind of bring in the emotional component of this when you think about like why is it that we do more or less things? A friend who's a CEO of another similar company as mine, and just talking about like what we're doing and why we're working on things, and just jamming on like consistently trying to do less. Have we just consistently learned that the less we do, the better we do it, and the more traction we get, and truly the more success we find. He turned me onto this article called "Confident Companies Do Less," and it's a great article because it covers kind of like the more obvious like return on investment type ideas, where it's like if you're trying to do 20 things versus you're trying to do one thing, that one thing is going to get so much more attention than the 20 different things, and you're going to get that much further in it. I mean, it's just like trying to learn 20 different martial arts all at the same time versus focusing on one. Like if you really focus and commit to that one, you're going to advance and get to the next belt and keep developing and growing. And like, yeah, it's good to be exposed to the other ideas and other types of stuff, but it's like your energy is going to be all spread out, and you're simply not going to get the kind of return. But I think the interesting thing about that article was, well, why is it that we try to do so many things? And it's an interesting question to ask yourself next time you're like, oh, what if we did this? Is it really because you're insecure? Is it because you're afraid to commit to the thing that you're already doing really well, and just committing and going deeper and getting better at it? Or is it, and why is it might be insecure? Is it that you're afraid that like you won't really be able to do it well? Is it you're afraid that you're going to get bored? Is it that you're insecure that you're not going to get recognized for it? Like, what is it? Because the people that I've seen in my life find the most amount of fulfillment from life and from business are the ones that are like highly focused and committed to whatever that thing is that they do. And it can be like all different types of businesses. But when you look at overall like the most successful businesses, it's the exception, the ones that do lots of things. Like almost like standard, the ones that are really, really successful. And this is not just small companies, this is big companies, are the ones that are highly focused on a specific like niche thing. So it doesn't have to be niche, but like
Yeah.
they're gonna do that one thing really well. And then yeah, maybe you do a few other things and those like help support it, but it's like stay focused on the thing that like you're really trying to accomplish. So I only wanted to jam on that because I like I'm glad you interpreted me believing that or thinking that or saying that because I can't emphasize it enough.
Yeah. So I think about this a lot, in our industry, like in general, right? I have two businesses that I own, that I'm an owner on, and I help run, right? And they're very different, obviously. But for me, it's not always. I realize less is more. Like I've focused on that because I've been reading this stuff since I was 20 years old, and I'm 41 now, and I've been trying to study business and how it grows for 20 something years, and I've experienced trying to add things in and how they failed. And so for me, it's not always the insecurity anymore. It used to be. Now it's the pressure. It's the 330 employees or the 4,000 members that have ideas that are like, man, what if we did a yoga class? Have you ever thought about doing this? And I'm like, for the 700th time, I appreciate what you're saying, but there's 500 other yoga classes in town. They can go there. That's not what we do. So they can be members there, but we can't do that here. That's not what we do. And trying to explain this to people, and some people are very strong-headed that they just believe we're wrong. And there's a multitude of reasons why we don't do it. But it's always like the pressure of like trying to saying no over and over again. This is what we do. This is what we do. No, no, bring it back in. This is what we do, and really focusing on that. And the only other time I open up ideas for verticals is things that support our business, but they're auxiliaries. For us, it's like we have our merchandise company, we have our tournament company, and um, and then we have our Easton online consulting company. But they literally help prop Easton up is one thing, and the idea is they don't take a lot of resources, and still they take more resources than I would like, and it ends up hurting Easton, I think, in the long run. But ideally, it's like that model where like eventually we'll have one person running that with his own team, and it won't take away from this beautiful thing we're doing to give opportunity for staff to grow. Because you run out of spaces to grow in a martial arts company. So anyway, just to hammer down why for me it's turned into the pressure side, like the constant
Hmm.
saying no and explaining why, and like you get new general managers, you get new staff members that are excited about something, and you don't want to break them down. You want to understand their point, but it's like, no, don't touch the hot stove, Calvin. No, then you just say,
Yeah.
okay, fine, touch the hot stove, and you let him do it. You watch it fall on its face, and you say, okay, cool, so let's move on. And those are the ones that learn the best. Like
Uh-huh.
you let them do it, and then you're like, okay, cool. You just wait, bide your time, and then it falls on his face. And
I think the thing too that I think that I really hear what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And this is more from the experience of like employees and team members than customers or clients or members. But I think that the more that you get focused and the more that you say no and the more that you show how committed you are to something, you then attract more and more teammates that get that and believe that and they grow through it too. And it's hard for them too. It's hard for everyone, I think, to just like wake up and like do it again and get better at that thing. It's like if it was easy, then I mean, you think about how hard it is just to get great at a sport. Like the people that get really great at the sport, they don't just have pure natural talent. They have natural talent, and they're like so hyper committed day after day after day after day for hours and hours and hours and hours. I have a quote for you because the connects back to Jason Dunn, because the dude was like a hardcore Warren Buffett fan. Here's a Warren Buffett quote for you. The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything.
yeah, I love that. I love this. I think this lines up with what we were talking about earlier. Our focus. For me, it translates into both sides of my life. Like I used to believe that life is work, work is life, but now I realize that I do need a separation, but I still share the same values in both. And what I mean by that is like for me, it's like I focus on three things. It's like family, right? That's a big piece for me. How do I improve? So I'm always reading a book about parenting, a book about relationships, doing therapy on these things, and spending time with my kids and trying to reflect upon it. And then it's like my body and health, right? That whole, how do I always improve my health, and what can I refocus on to make this better? And then there's work, and work is, and within there's some hobbies. Like I'm trying to practice guitar and get better at these side things. But my three main focuses are these things. It's like my, and when I say work, that's like, business, and but also philosophy dives into there. Like, how do I become a better leader? How do I, anyway, those are my buckets that I focus on. And within those, there's like my intellectual or my activities that I appreciate, like whether it's the skiing and the running and the guitar, but all of those kind of fall into health for me, right? When I talk about the hobbies, I think hobbies fall into the health department, the health category for me. But it's simplified, you know. Um, and I'm not going to be the best skier I could be, because I like doing other things, and that's okay as long as it works towards the greater goal of health. Then I'm doing the right thing. So yeah, Simplify has made my life quite a bit easier.
I like it, man.
All right, so we kind of talked about your past a little bit, how we got here, and I would love to hear more about. We kind of, I don't know, you've been to Easton for like a year or two, but I'd love to hear more about like present, like what. I'd love to hear more about Kion. I'd love to hear more about like the supreme supplement that you have gotten me onto, and so many other people, and it's just proven itself as like everybody that takes it for a little while is like, man, I actually feel the effect of this. My wife is the biggest cynic and skeptic I know, to use, and she's hard into science, so she always pushes back on anything. And this is one when she like approves of something, I'm like, oh, this is real, because I'm like, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. Everything is just wonderful. And wife's like, I don't trust anything anybody says. And when she like it passes her test and some others at Easton, I'm like, this is a legit product. So yeah, kind of talk a little bit about present day, kind of rift as you want, but I'd love to hear more about Kion and your premier product.
I mean, so I'll just jump into like, what is this thing you're talking about? The it's the Kion, it's Kion aminos, and it's essential amino acids. And the reason why I think it works so well is because it really is so fundamental to the body and fundamental for fitness. And I'll explain it briefly, and then maybe you can like ask more questions if like this is what you're thinking, or like why, how this fits in with martial arts, overall with health, or all these different aspects. So at the most fundamental level, I think the most important thing just to understand is what protein is, carbohydrates are, and fat are. These three macronutrients. And really, the most important thing just to note is that carbohydrates and fat, you can like debate all day whether you need carbohydrates and fat or not, or should I be keto, and what's the role of sugar and what does it do? But just like at a fundamental level, they are gasoline. They're fuel to burn to move your body. That's their primary role in the body. Now there's other types of like, very specific fats that perform these other specific functions, but like fundamentally, when you eat carbohydrates and fat, your body converts them into ATP to like move your body, to beat your heart, to do stuff. The primary role of protein is different. The primary role of protein actually is when you eat protein, and this could be from plant protein or animal protein, you digest the protein and you break it up into these little individual component parts, which are called amino acids. And there's 20 of them, but there's 9 of them that are super important because they're essential. They're the ones that your body can't synthesize. You can actually eat the 9 and your body can synthesize the other 11. It can make them out of the other 9. But they're also really important because these 9 essential amino acids, when you eat them, what they do is they stimulate new protein synthesis in your body. So why does this matter? How does this work? Well, what I think a lot of people don't realize is that the protein in your body, your muscles, your heart, your skin, even hormones, enzymes, all these things are made up of proteins. They actually all have like a half-life. So the proteins that are forming the tissue in your body, they last for a certain amount of time, and then they're basically not good anymore. They need to be refreshed. And when they get refreshed, the protein, like literally your heart tissue, breaks apart into the little individual amino acids. And then the amino acids that aren't good and need to be like flushed out, you pee them out. And then through eating new proteins, new amino acids get supplied to the blood, and you utilize them to rebuild your heart tissue, to rebuild your muscle, etc. So you literally have to eat protein to survive, not to help fuel your body, but to rebuild your body. It's literally like the building blocks of your whole body. So it's not just like the energy that helps run it, it's actually like the building blocks of it. So it's just fundamentally different from carbohydrates and fat. You can convert protein and amino acids into glucose and you can burn it like you burn sugar, but that's not its primary role. The primary role is literally to help rebuild your body. So the reason why essential amino acids as a supplement are so interesting, like, well, why not just eat protein then, right? Which you should. You should. I recommend people eat a lot of protein daily, because it's the thing again that's going to fuel all these things. And it's not just like it doesn't just help you rebuild your muscle. It doesn't just help with recovery from training. It doesn't just help with all this like organ function. It also directly helps with your mood and your mental state, because your neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that are used for basically from which your emotions are generated, are actually the metabolites of amino acids. So proteins is like also what generates your experience of mood and emotions, etc. So super critical to eat a lot of protein every day if you can. But the thing that happens is that not all protein is created equal. And what we've learned, especially over the last 20 years, is that the quality of a protein is defined by a few things. One is how digestible is it? When I eat the protein, can the amino acids inside of it, do they become available to my body to actually be used to stimulate new protein synthesis or to be used as the building blocks of new proteins? And then two, which amino acids make up the protein? So whether it's like peas or beans or nutritional yeast or whey protein or chicken or eggs or whatever it is, they all, like, while they all are considered a protein, they actually have different amounts of those different 20 amino acids. And a higher quality protein is one that's highly digestible and has really high concentrations of the essential amino acids, not the non-essential ones, and especially has higher concentrations of a few specific ones. I won't go into it so it doesn't get like too sciencey and annoying, but like you want certain ones. So like for an example of a really high quality protein is egg. Egg is a very high quality protein. And it's a complete protein because it has all the essential amino acids, but it's also very high in certain amino acids. Interestingly, like there's things that surprise people, like a potato is a complete protein. It has complete proteins, right? But it's got a very low amount of the protein relative to all the carbohydrates that you're getting in it. So you'd have to eat a lot of potatoes, right?
Got it.
Yeah. And it's not as high in some of these other really good amino acids like leucine, isoleucine, valine. Um, so, um, one reason why you might consider supplementing with essential amino acids is because you're not as disciplined and dedicated to your diet and knowledge about your diet as you really want to be and could be and ultimately should be to have really vibrant health. Because it does require some work to ensure that you're eating really high quality proteins throughout the day in proper doses and getting in this amount of protein that you want. And so something like a free form essential amino acid supplement basically just makes sure that you hit those bare minimums that you need to hit. And I think I just name it, like you can totally be plant based and get sufficient protein and get the right amino acids. You need to eat a lot though. You need to eat a lot of food. And if you're gonna eat that much food, you need to exercise a lot too to basically burn off all those calories. So something like essential amino acids can super help in that way. But the same thing for meat eaters. Some people who eat meat might be like, well, I eat animal protein and it's got all the right things. But it's like, well, like, how much do you eat? Is it really high quality, in the right doses, at the right times? Like, are you really just eating like an awesome piece of lean chicken and some like a bodybuilder would eat, like lean chicken and broccoli and like carrots, or are you eating like a hamburger? Because in the hamburger there's like a bun in it, and there's mayonnaise, there's a bunch of other stuff that's actually going into that caloric content. You're not getting like kind of the maximum amount of healthy protein relative to the rest of calories that you're eating. But I think other really important reasons to consume them is that when you look at supplementation, which a lot of athletes think about, I'm going to take whey protein after I train or something to help with my recovery. Well, it's been proven that essential amino acids relative to whey protein before training are 3 times as effective as muscle at stimulating muscle protein synthesis, and they're dramatically better for after training for helping with recovery. The reason for that is because when you take the free form essential amino acids, they're immediately available in your blood and immediately available to the muscle, And those peak concentrations help maximize the amount of muscle protein synthesis. So if you take it before you exercise, it's going to maximize the gains you get from the exercise. It's going to make sure you build more new muscle tissue from it. It's also going to help reduce the amount of soreness and reduce the amount of recovery time that you need, because it's reducing the amount of muscle protein breakdown to a degree that is just significantly more than whole food protein, like many times more than whole food protein, and also way more than even like the most high quality protein powder. So if you're thinking about supplementation already with protein powders, it's like it's just superior for that purpose, way more superior, and you can take a much smaller dose of it. um, and then I think a couple more other reasons why it's really interesting is that if you're in any form of cutting calories, which in most cases you think about it for weight loss, like, hey, I'm trying to lose fat. When you cut calories, you have an increased need for amino acids. You actually have to consume 30% more essential amino acids than you normally would to maintain your muscle. That's why when people cut, they typically lose a significant amount of muscle. If you consume essential amino acids, you can avoid losing any muscle and only lose fat. So for a typical dieter type person, it's awesome. It's like, there's people, someone in our office cut 25 pounds of fat over a few months with no exercise, actually, only through diet, and lost no muscle through consuming essential amino acids every day. But if you're a competitive fighter and you're trying to cut weight for a match, it's super ideal, right? Like if you consume enough essential amino acids throughout the day, you can literally only lose fat and not lose any muscle during that period. And if you're continuing to train, you're going to maintain all the muscle function as well. And then the last thing is just aging. As we age, our ability to digest protein, break it down, is reduced, and our sensitivity to resistance training and to protein, helping to stimulate new protein synthesis, is greatly reduced. So for an aging adult, essential amino acids are 6 times, have been proven to show over 6 times the impact of whey protein. So like 3 grams of essential amino acids had the same muscle protein synthesis spike as 20 grams of whey protein. So basically, like if you're trying to cut weight for whatever reason, if you're training as an athlete, and if you're an aging adult, and I would just say aging is like really the reduction in the ability to maintain muscle mass starts in like your mid 30s. So if you're over your mid 30s, if you're 40 and above, um, they're all really good reasons to be taking the supplement, and why people have like such amazing results from it. I guess the last thing I just say on this is like, our formula is not proprietary. You can read exactly what it is, and it's based on hundreds of studies. So if you go and you Google and try to research this stuff, you'll find it. If you really want to learn more, I would just go and look for the International Society of Sports Nutrition position paper stand on essential amino acids. It's basically an academic group. They all critique all of each other's work, and they make position paper statements to say like, hey, what supplements are actually worth it, and why would you take it, and what does the science say? They have a great recent paper from this year on it. It's like over 20 pages long. They break down all the stuff, show all the references. But like essential amino acids in the type of proportions that Kion uses, super legit. People feel it and experience it, and there's just tons of research behind it. So it's one of those supplements where it's like, it's kind of crazy. More people don't know about it. People know about protein. Some people in this athletic community know about branched chain amino acids, but it's really worth looking at, because branched chain amino acids don't work on their own. First of all, don't waste your money on branched chain amino acids anymore. And two, if you're supplementing with protein, you should really think about supplementing with essential amino acids, not to replace the protein you eat in your diet, but if you're thinking about supplementation specifically for athletic training, weight loss, cutting weight, or aging, then it's the science is there.
Oh man. Okay, I have lots. It was hard for me to stay patient during all that. There's so many things I want to touch on.
Sorry, did I talk too
No,
long?
no, I love it. I want everybody to make sure they hear the whole thing in depth, and I also think I can bring it back in from a personal case study and have some questions for you. The things you've told me in the past that help. Not everybody's going to have a science brain to be able to keep up with the terminology. Not that you were too complex or anything, but I think some of the stuff you've told me is examples of why it works. Like in practice, I think can be useful, and I'll use myself as well as like someone who's dedicated quite a bit to this. And just kind of how it's changed my life. Like I've been working out since I was 15 years old to play football, and I've been doing it consistently. I'm 41 now. But one thing I did recently, I think this is really important, is I went to a plant-based vegan diet in like November, around November 1st. And I stayed that way for a long time. And to your point, I work out a lot. I try to do ultra running. I do jujitsu. I lift a lot. And I do a lot of sauna sessions just because I like to feel better. So when I eat a lot, it doesn't put weight on for me because I'm doing so much. But I do notice that like when I went to the vegan base, the first thing I was like, I need to figure out how to make sure I'm getting my essential amino acids, right? Because I know they're not in the products I was going to be removing or the products I was going to be having. It'd be hard to get there, right? No matter how much lentil and potato and quinoa and farro I was eating and all these vegetables. So like I was already using Kion for the past few years, or the essential amino acids product, but having this was a massive piece because I wasn't slowing down. I did a 50-mile race on a vegan diet, and I felt wonderful. My energy was consistent. I didn't have any of the meat products in it. As I've come through it, right, I've added eggs back. That was the first thing I added back because I don't think anything. If I get them from a farm, I don't feel bad about. By the way, I went to vegan based for my own health. I do agree with some of the moral things behind it, obviously, but that wasn't the reason. I wasn't taking some moral stand. I wear leather shoes, I want to be clear on that. Um, so when I got the eggs, it also helped quite a bit, and that's funny. I didn't know it was that good of a complete protein. Um, but the going to plant based with Kion was huge for me. And then one thing that you talked about, or you didn't talk about, we've noticed, me and this other guy, Mike Phipps, is like even during lifting, like I feel like I can push a little bit longer in the middle of my sets. Like if I'm benching or squatting, like if I take Keon's prior to it within 20 minutes, I noticed a big difference in how much longer I can push my sets. So one thing I was really into for a long time was like the 5x5. So 5 sets of 5. And by the end of like set 4 and 5, you're wrecked. But with Kion in there, with the amino acids in there, I noticed myself pushing further, and I could see a drastic difference when I took it beforehand and when I didn't. And of course, there's always other things we could put that to: better night's sleep. I had a better food the night before, stress. But I noticed a change there, and my wife did. My wife actually admitted it, and she doesn't admit this stuff. I can't emphasize how how critical she is of everything like this. And when she says it, I'm like, I believe her. Okay, it's not just in my head. Um, so I think those are important. And there's two other things I'd love for you to talk about. One is, I think this is important that people still don't get it: the difference between BCAA and essential amino acids. Like I'd love for you to dive in a little bit more so people really understand what you're saying, because people will say, "Oh yeah, I have BCAAs." They'll walk out of this and they'll just go get more BCAAs, and they're not really seeing the difference. And then I think the other piece that really hit home for me, that I've told this 100 times now, is the NASA study about the fasting in bed. Or those two
Mhm.
pieces really clicked for me.
Okay. I will speak to those. First, I want to describe the mechanism of action about why you feel like you can lift more and why you actually can lift more in those sets.
Okay, please.
So, amino acids in the blood are used for a few things in the body when you're going to go and lift. So what happens is actually when you take the amino acids before you lift, it puts them into the blood and it sends them right into the muscle. And when it goes right into the muscle, it basically already stimulates muscle protein synthesis. It tells the body to build more muscle already. So the main benefit of that, then when you start training, is when you combine that with the resistance training, you're going to get even more bang for the buck out of it. It's not going to make it to where you don't get tired or you can't do more, but like you're literally going to be building fresher, more newer proteins and muscle through that activity because you're getting the stimulus from the amino acids and from the training itself. But on top of that, when you're training, what happens is what happens is you actually do start to break down the proteins in the muscle. And when you break down the proteins in the muscle, it fatigues the muscle. So by taking the amino acids beforehand, you help prevent as much muscle protein breakdown. And I think this is the thing where it's like, if you have gym experience, you're going to be like, wait, but I thought you had to like rip apart the muscle and then the muscle rebuilding is how it gets bigger. That's an oversimplification.
Mm,
Really, what you're doing through the resistance training is you are stressing the muscle to stimulate new protein synthesis. That's the fundamental thing you're trying to get to, is to get new proteins to be built. And reducing the amount of muscle protein breakdown does not prohibit that. Instead, when you take the amino acids, it helps prohibit the amount of muscle that's getting broken down, but promotes more to be created. And at the same time, by supplying tons of amino acids in the blood, when you do start to break it down, it can immediately be used to help refuel the development of those new proteins, and it reduces the amount of muscle fatigue that you have. So by taking the amino acids before, not only are you getting more gains, but you're reducing the amount of muscle fatigue, and you're going to be able to train longer and harder, most likely.
And
So
this
there is
translates into the jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai. Like I've noticed this when I'm doing like an hour-long randori, like having that prior, I feel the fatigue doesn't seem as present for me. I don't know how else to put it, but
Well,
it's
it's real. I mean, it helps prevent as much muscle breakdown so your muscles don't get as fatigued.
yeah.
Like it is a real thing. Whereas I think most people would just think, oh, like endurance athletes think like having carbs, like if they're more carb focused and if you're like a keto adapted, maybe think about how you burn fat. But like your muscles have their own need that are separate from that. You're also in that type of activity, you do increase the amount of amino acids you use, and this is getting a little more nerdy, but like amino acids have this other role at the side of the muscle itself. They're a facilitator for the mitochondria to convert glucose and fat into ATP. And so you use up amino acids for that as well. So you need a lot of amino acids both for the muscle and for the side of the mitochondria to convert the glucose and the fat into ATP, and sometimes even for the amino acids to be used as the fuel source itself. And you can't replicate that through eating more fat or more carbs or being more fed, etc. You literally have to do it through amino acids. Like that's the only way. I mean, you could do it through protein if you time like eating a bunch of protein before, but when you take amino acids right before, it's just like I said earlier, 3 times the impact of whey protein, which is whey protein is like the gold standard for sports nutrition science. It's beaten every other protein powder out there in terms of its efficacy. So, um, anyways, that's the mechanism of action for that.
And let's be clear, just so everybody hasn't tried this, you're not protein you drink, you're thinking of a kind of a sludgy beverage, right? Like with the Kion aminos, it actually feels like a sports drinks. So you can take it super quick. It's not hard to put down. You can drink it during exercise. It feels good. It's like you think whey protein, you're drinking this, you're like, dude, I do not want to drink that during exercise
Yeah,
or before.
yeah, it's like it's same consistency as like electrolyte drink.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
that's
you can drink. I mean, I drink it during like a kickboxing class
mhm.
too. Like drink it before and during.
I think people need to know that.
Yeah. Um, So, and one other thing on that too, which people don't know, is getting like again a slight tangent. But actually, when people think about hydration and they think, oh, I need salt to hydrate, etc., there's actually a few different components of how hydration works. But ultimately, it's about helping water pass through into the small intestine, and it's about the osmolality of that liquid. And that's why, like back in the day, like Gatorade included sugars and also electrolytes in order to help the water basically pass through the small intestine. And amino acids provide significant improvements to the osmolality, so they also literally help hydrate you better than water
That
alone.
is new information for me.
Yeah. And again, it's like we don't market it for that reason because again, you try to tell this whole story like you can't. But if
Yeah,
we're
have
nerding
folks
out
figure
on
it
the
out.
science of it, like you literally could be drinking it during your workout instead of some other type of electrolyte drink because it will help better hydrate you. If you sweat really, really, really hard for 2 hours, it's not going to replace the salts and the potassium. But the reason why you would take electrolytes like that after you train is actually to replace them being lost from the body, not to improve the hydration of the water itself.
Mm, mm.
Okay. So, getting to the BCAA thing. So, the simplest way of talking about this is BCAAs and EAAs are related. They're related to protein as well, and it's one history of us trying to understand how do we improve our physical performance. So we start to understand the role of protein. We break down the protein. We're like, well, what's inside this protein? And what we discovered were there's these 3 branched chain amino acids. I actually mentioned them earlier: leucine, isoleucine, and valine, that are really important. They're the 3 of the amino acids that are really important when we evaluate the quality of a protein, and they're really important for muscle protein synthesis. Well, when we started to discover them in studies 40 years ago, we were like, oh, well, like we could just make this a supplement. Let's just take these 3 out and give this to people in high doses, and then they don't have to take the protein. And over decades of studying it, what we've realized is it actually doesn't work. If you only take the 3 on their own, it does not promote muscle protein synthesis. It could actually be catabolic
Mm.
because it tells the body it wants to start promoting muscle protein synthesis, but it doesn't have, this is what's really important, the other 6 essential amino acids. BCAAs are 3 of the 9 essential amino acids. You
Got
have
it.
to have all 9. So it tells the body it wants to do it. It doesn't have the other 6. So it could actually promote the breakdown of existing muscle tissue to then supply the amino acids to help promote the new protein synthesis. So there's a great paper, I think it's 2017 meta-analysis of all of this. It's like BCAAs, myth or reality, and it goes over all the research and it just shows like there's no there. So BCAAs are not, they don't work on their own. You have to consume all 9 essential amino acids on at one time to get the benefits. That said, the BCAAs are a really important 3 of those 9.
You
But if
did
you're
mention
taking,
that. Yeah.
yeah, but if you take them on their own, it's a waste of your money, and the science is pretty clear.
All right. I know we don't have a lot of time, but there's some other things I want to make sure I hit on before you have to go or before I have to go. Um, so we talked about the BCAs and the amino acids. That was huge. Let's talk about that study that you've.
Oh, the NASA study. Yeah.
This
And
clicked
honestly,
for me.
they
Boop.
they did a few. They did a few of these studies actually. They shortened it from 28 days to 7 days because they were able to prove it within 7 days, and it was so miserable, the 28-day study. But basically, the big point to communicate here is that the reason why you do resistance training, primary reason why you do resistance training, is to actually stimulate, I keep saying it, muscle protein synthesis, basically telling the body to synthesize new muscle. That's why you do the resistance training, to do that. But what maybe you've heard in the past is like, when you do the resistance training, you got to eat protein afterwards, and that's true, because you're basically telling the body to generate this new muscle, but you have to feed it with the raw materials of the protein to help build it, right? And that's why those two go together really well. And I think in traditional bro science, they'll be like, well, you can't just eat the protein. You got to do the resistance training first, right? It's not like protein alone is going to build your muscle. So this is exactly what NASA was trying to figure out. NASA was like, we're sending astronauts into space. They don't have resistance. They're floating. There's no gravity. How can we get it to where they can maintain their lean muscle mass while they're in space? So they naturally try to fund different studies to figure out how to do that. One of the proposed studies, which ended up being very successful, and it's from almost 20 years ago now, was they got a group of participants and they kept them at complete bed rest for 28 days. So imagine like sitting in a hospital bed, bedpan. You're allowed to eat like 3 normal meals throughout the day, but you can't move for a month. And then anyone who's been at bed rest before has the experience of like how much muscle you can lose just being at bed rest. So on top of that, they gave them essential amino acids and actually a little bit of carbohydrate, but they had a follow-up study that showed that you didn't need the carbohydrate. The carbohydrate to spike insulin, which also provokes muscle protein synthesis. But it was large doses of essential amino acids, 15 grams. It'd be like 3 scoops of Kion aminos. That'd be the equivalent. They did that 6 times a day for a month. After a month, across these participants, there was no net muscle loss.
How many times a day did you say they did it?
6.
6 times a day. So
Yeah.
six. Okay, so it's a lot of.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a lot, but you're talking about like no movement, nothing. Yeah. I mean, and even when I say that, I mean like it's having like a 6 things of 6 Nalgene's a day or something. It's not like that much to consume. But I mean, I think for a normal person who thinks about having a scoop before they go work out, it seems like a lot. But this isn't a more clinical setting. This is an extreme setting. But it just shows you that the essential amino acids themselves were able to stimulate sufficient new muscle protein synthesis to where these participants, without any type of resistance or exercise or training over a month, did not lose muscle mass. Now, they did lose some strength, right? Because they're not using the muscles, they're not like operating them during the period, but they didn't lose muscle mass. So when you interpret that, now you take that to like a martial arts context, right? And you're thinking about like, hey, I need to cut in preparation for a fight, but I don't want to lose muscle mass, and you're actually still training. You could absolutely maintain your muscle throughout a pretty significant cut, but cut all the fat. And even actually, if you weren't doing some kind of significant training, you could like not be training that much and you wouldn't lose the muscle. Now, it's like if you're not training, you're going to lose some of like your agility and maybe some of your power and force. But
Yeah.
like it's a pretty significant, I think, reset for a lot of people's minds around how they think about nutrition versus exercise, because it's an example of the nutritional intervention itself doing something very similar, of the same essence of what we see the resistance training doing.
So I want to touch on something here because some people may be confused about what this means, and some people may hear scoops or whatever. Like I
Uh-huh.
think, from my understanding, these amino acids, unlike a whey protein, these are like a 0 calorie thing or almost nominal calories, if any at all. So we're just giving them these amino acids, but there's not really any calorie intake with this. So when we talk about these 6 jugs of water, it's literally water with just um, these powders that are put in there. So we're not adding anything crazy to this. It's
Yeah,
super light.
yeah. What I would say is it's super light. What I would say is like claims about the specific calories is slightly more complicated than what you're describing.
Okay.
But this is the kind of thing that gets into like more complicated overall for like all of nutrition, because simple, like in most cases people think like protein has 4 grams per 4 calories per gram, carbs have 4, fat has 9, but actually like different types of proteins and different types of carbs and different types of fats can vary. And also when you're talking about isolated amino acids, they can vary as well. And on top of that, um, when you consume certain types of macronutrients, they have different impacts on your metabolism. So when you consume protein, it actually stimulates your metabolism more because because it's helping rebuild proteins. It makes your body burn more energy. Also, breaking down the proteins requires more energy. So even if you say protein has 4 calories per gram and carbs has 4 calories per gram, it really doesn't. Protein has like effectively less net calories because you burn calories just utilizing the protein. So
Mm,
amino acids are similar in that way, in that they uh, the way that they interact with the body is distinct, and like different amino acids have different impacts, but like overall, when you go about, so I think this is something important to know. When you go about and you look at these types of products, most products are labeled according to like that 449 rule, and it's complicated. It's dealing with science and regulatory, etc. But the reason why you would see that like on Kion aminos that it lists no calories, or another amino acid product, functionally technically the reason for that is because it doesn't truly contain protein.
mm,
It contains the active components of protein
wow.
in
Okay.
a much more efficient punch that provokes this muscle protein synthesis in a way more efficient way. So I think the better thing would be to say is that like calorie labeling is actually a whole complex thing between science and regulatory, et cetera, and that essential amino acids are by far the most effective, efficient punch to to provoke whole body protein synthesis, muscle protein synthesis, than anything else that exists. They provoke an increase in your metabolism, et cetera, and they're the most efficient form of that.
All
But
right.
it's like it's a bit more complex, and I have to like speak in
Yeah, I'm
those
glad you
terms
did.
too, because it's like yeah, just being from the company perspective, want to make sure people like get.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
that I think.
I don't want to be part of like an oversimplification of it.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anything I say does not reflect does not reflect Angelo or a key on the company. To
Well,
be
and
clear.
some companies out there like market in a much more aggressive, oversimplified way. That's like, I believe in like nuance, integrity, trying to like be real about everything we can be real about.
Which I appreciate. I don't come into these podcasts to be right. I come into these podcasts to give what I thought and then be corrected, and I appreciate that. I don't take it in a way at all. I think this man. I want to keep going. One last thing on the supplement, then I'll ask my final question. I think everything. This is still a concern. I think with people, they always like, well, I don't want to get bulky or huge, right? That common question.
Uh huh.
Um, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about extended energy and like lack of fatigue. I feel like with these supplements, um, and I just I don't know if you want to touch on that at all, just about how
Yeah, I mean, I think like the first thing I'll say is for most people, I don't know about y'all, your family, y'all are just like beasts. Y'all are like so strong. But most people,
genetics
it's
though.
gonna be really hard to get bulky. Like, I think it's a common fear. It's a more common fear I hear from women, but it's also from certain types of dudes or certain types of athletes. Like they don't want to get too big. Like to get big, you have to lift a lot and you have to eat a lot of calories too. Like you really have to eat a lot. Um, and what I would say is I would, so it goes back to the last conversation we were just having about like kind of total caloric content and how much muscle protein synthesis you get from how much you eat, etc. If your primary goal is being lean, but having well defined lean muscle and lower body fat, essential amino acids like directly support that goal. Because
Yeah.
basically what they're going to do is they're going to help you to replace old muscle tissue as efficiently and effectively as possible. And they're going to increase your overall metabolism, helping you thus to burn more fat. They're going to help you build and maintain more of this lean muscle. And they don't like, unlike other things, like if you really want to get bulky, like if you're trying to get as big as possible, I instead would encourage you to eat just like way more calories overall. And I would encourage you honestly to consume a lot more carbs, like right after you train with the protein that you can with that you eat, because it's going to actually help to load more water into the muscle tissue, make you bigger, etc. Whereas like if you're only taking the essential amino acids, it's just not going to make you bulky. Like it's going to make you more cut. Basically,
Yeah.
it's going to make you more defined if you, of course, if you're making like other types of decisions in your diet, like if you still eat brownies with your kid like I do. Like it's like the brownie has to go somewhere, man.
That's why my wife both run a lot.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's been amazing. I wanted to ask for feedback and stuff. We're out of time. We did it another time. Your life journey and the beginning of it and how the transition happened for you from like, oh, I want to suck the marrow out of life, right? I love that. Like I talk about it in therapy a lot. Like, and it also sometimes causes me to be, too hard on people in general, my kids, whatever, coworkers, because I found some potential in myself through all the challenges I had. I was like, wow, I can actually do things I didn't think was possible. So for me, I see a lot of people like they have so much potential, and when they're not realizing it, it makes me crazy, and I come down hard on them. Um, I just wanted to debrief that. But I wanted your thought, and this is kind of a broad question, and it's going to be hard to answer, I think, but you're smart. You'll figure it out. Do you have a recommendation or a thought on that journey for others? Like, hopefully everybody doesn't get stabbed or beat up or have a
Hmm.
hardcore LSD trip for that transition. But, like, what are your thoughts or your message, I guess, in regard to that transition for you and how it could help or be applied to others?
I think I have done really well, benefited from seeking two kind of primary influences and primary tracks in life. One is very clearly behavioral, like continue to improve my behaviors, like wake up at this time, drink this water, meditate. I don't know if it's like you're trying to improve your diet, like track what you're eating, look at it. Like there's like behavioral things that you can do, and you can get help with those. You can communicate with like if you see something you're struggling with, you can ask someone else to help you with it. You can hire someone, you can get a partner in something like to improve whatever the behavior is, whether it's procrastination or overeating or drug addiction or whatever it is. There's like clearly like behavioral things you can focus on. At the same time, I think we all need, I won't say all, this is me, man. Yeah, so it's like I think it'll work for other people. I actually don't know because I've never been in someone else's life. A deep contemplative source of insight. And I think that type of stuff can come from meditation, just like sitting down and being quiet and meditating. It can come from therapy. I think certain types of therapy, particularly therapy that's like less seeking some goal, like it's going to fix you in some way or get you to change your behavior. It's more just like literally just exploring the contents of your mind. I think it can come from like journaling, from free writing. I think it can come from like long walks and hikes in the woods, but basically some type of contemplative, open-ended, non-goal focused practice. Because like behavioral stuff kind of gets you so far, just like doing the
Yeah.
right thing every day, but you could be doing it for like the wrong reason, or not the wrong reason, but like a more immature, less insightful reason. Um, And so like the insight thing really happens. That said, I mean, how many stories do you have people that got some amazing insight from taking psychedelics and like they're like blah blah blah, and then like they don't have like the behavioral tools to actually like implement it to like make their life better. And now they're like on this high about like how much insight they have, but like they can't do anything with it. Like you got to have the behavioral day-to-day practices and things that are going to make you better. And I think both those paths have been really helpful for me and
And do you
continue to be.
the behavioral one is, at least for me, right? That's kind of it. For me, it was a kid. I had a kid, and
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, geez, I got to change. The idea of pregnancy, and that was like the first step of like this. What does that mean to change? What is that? What does that really mean? And that started me on the path of choosing behaviors that benefit towards that future goal of being a better father, leader, husband. Um, and then do you think though for others sometimes it's just like I want to improve my behavior, my eating, or and the behaviors are the first part of it, and then they get the insight later on. Like you think it's chicken and egg, like one comes pretty.
That's why my senses they kind of go back and forth, And it's interesting, man. I mean, I can't. Another simple answer would be like, if you're like talking to like young men, like, yeah, get married and have kids. Like that'll be like the quickest way to like stop struggling with trying to figure out your purpose or blah 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 or whatever, man. You'll just like show up and start doing what you need to do every day.
It's true,
Like
man. It's really
you'll
true.
just like you'll like what's important will become obvious so quickly. And so I would say more like getting married and having kids for me is actually I would put it in the contemplative practice bucket. I would put it in like the therapy bucket and the meditation bucket. Like being part of a family and a husband and a father provokes insight that I couldn't get anywhere else. Whereas the behavioral stuff is more like um yeah, man, like what time you wake up. Do you journal every day? Like, do you like commitment to whatever your exercise is, uh to tracking what you eat, to like if you're having a hard time communicating with people, let's say you get an insight about like, man, I keep being like a dick in this context with someone at work or with my wife or whatever, and it's like I really want that to change. Well, you do need the tools to talk differently to those people, right? Or to learn how to listen better. So like go to a communication training, like literally just sign up, like get a coach that's going to help you learn how to communicate better, or sign up for nonviolent communication or whatever class you can to just like learn the tools to learn how to communicate better. So I guess that's what I mean. It's like continuing to like build your tool set and improve your behaviors and literally what you do every day, while at the same time, if you're only obsessed with that and you don't seek like deeper, greater insight through some type of contemplative things, like you're kind of just like, why are you even doing it? You might just be doing all these behaviors to like be, I don't like, for a reason that ends up feeling really empty ultimately.
Yeah. Wow. Angelo, that was absolutely incredible. I think this is one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done or listened to, hearing you speak. So I really appreciate your time, man. Hopefully, I'll see you on the mat soon. And I'm going to give a little intro to this podcast to make sure people hear the bullet points we talk about, so they wait to certain points. Like, please pay attention to this part of it. Wait to the end because this part's incredible. Because I think there's so much valuable insight in here that so many people, at least at Easton, I mean the greater world, obviously, but at Easton could get so much from. So I appreciate your time, man. I hope you have a great day, and thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Have a great day, man.